It's like we kind of like informally decided to have a stream just because it's Monday and
It is Monday.
and kind of like no, but what's interesting about this one is that we kind of like get on with our day. It's like evening my time now. It's early evening at 7 p.m. Noah's had a fairly busy morning by the sounds of it, and you've kind of eased into your day because you've probably worked like 2 double shifts in a row. I know you, Ben, and it's like, but it's like the overriding desire is to get on stream and be nerds and talk shit. It's incredible. Like I can see like Noah's like, okay, guys, I need to take care of my call. Like I need to just go take care of my call. It's my anniversary. Like everything's like, but I need to nerd out now, And then his opening salvo is that in the next 5 years. And then he gave us that introduction. So welcome everybody to an informal stream. I have been recording since Noah arrived with his opening salvo. It's very good to see you guys. Welcome.
Pleasure.
Welcome. Always a pleasure.
You know what it is? Why does my sentiment perk up about content? And it just gives me good purpose. I treat all of this content as a diary, a journal. It allows me to express things, which allows me to digest things for myself. And it's just all that more satisfying that it could actually help other folks at least start to digest what the hell is going on.
But then we also go through that process when we articulate what's going on, like we realize a whole lot of gems in the process as well. It's like kind of like reflecting on an idea, and then next thing you know, it's like you're being challenged on the idea, or someone agrees with you, and then they add this whole like different dimension to it, and you're just like, wow, I didn't think about that, or I didn't realize I was wrong about this, and then you kind of get a chance to reassess. I mean, that's what I enjoy about it the most. It's like just kind of like growing the scope. I mean, I would never have thought that I could sit down and have a chat to Captain Rational about like all this rational macro, like multi-layered, like money making, money spending stuff. And it's like, here I am, I'm chatting about it. I mean, I'm mostly clueless, but I must admit I've come a long way in a very short space of time. So
you just got to keep learning.
Keep learning.
We all have. I sat down with my wife at the couch the other night, and I pulled up YouTube. And it's Jeff and Steven Van Meter and all the macro folks that love to do their things that we all have various opinions about. But the point was, I told her this didn't exist in 2009, 2008. There was no capacity to hear people speak about their ideas and journey with managing financials. So the exponential, from like a graph perspective, the interweaving of ideas has just been extraordinary. We have access to all these observations.
Yeah, I think you had to be literally on Wall Street in order to be able to have access to these thoughts and like all this experience and stuff that you can just get going on Twitter now. That like, I mean, it's crazy just how far you can get into educating yourself just with resources that are available to you online now that like they were not really available, and like you just didn't have access to all these various ideas that you could kind of put through their paces and see what you think about them. I don't know. It's a wonderful time to be trying to learn stuff.
Extraordinary.
So I wanted to, I kind of had an idea. I was kind of like coaching the kids soccer earlier on today, and I was just thinking, I was like, normally we kind of get into, the macro side of things, and we'll definitely touch on that today. But I wanted to kind of pick your brains around, like what is interesting you at the moment, like what is of interest to you at the moment in kind of like crypto, in general, like what are the things that are interesting, and then also particularly like new projects. I mean, obviously I think both of you would agree with me, like Tapioca is just something that, I mean, we're all looking forward to, and we do have like tremendous fascination around that product. I mean, Ben, you working with the guys,
Yep.
but I wanted to just explore other protocols as well. Just just kind of to kick things off, and then we can get into the macro side. And maybe do it the other way around. Normally we do macro first and then a bit of crypto, but I wanted to just kick it off with a bit of crypto and just kind of get a perspective on where you guys are looking at the moment and what's of interest. I don't know if you want to kick it off, Noah.
I had this talk in regards on my stream, and I always battling exactly what you're battling with at the moment. Which do you start with first?
Yeah.
I always like to discourage people, or historically I've tried to discourage people from engaging with markets prior to, due diligence, so on and so forth. But, I guess there's only three things. Might as well just be very explicit. I beat around the bush way too much. Since late November, there's only three things that have really caught my four things, but the fourth thing I've invalidated as something I'm interested in. First and foremost, Tapioca and what it has emerged into, in my mind, with regard to its place in the market. It has overtones of Layer Zero and Stargate. It has overtones of AAVE. It has overtones of Liquidy. That's crazy. So, if the boys hit the critical immutability, at least with core modules, and head in that direction, with what I discuss often, it's a big deal. It's a multi-billion-dollar liquidity big deal. Because obviously AAVE has the critical immunity, but I think they're slow to iterate, and I think there's room in the space because Compound has done nothing, and so that's first and foremost what catches my fancy. I look forward to the BLP, and I probably will be acquiring a bit more. So the fourth one was Solidly. And I was very excited for mainnet because I was always interested in what Andre talked about. And he always talks great. He never executed good at all. So I was excited for a manifestation of what he talked about wonderfully, but executed hopefully well on mainnet. I've come to the point where I see there's no room left for liquidity management on mainnet. At least that's my current sentiment. Curve is dominating. They have $1 billion more in liquidity than Uniswap. Uniswap coming in second. And Uniswap's narrative is interesting because why use Uniswap? Who uses Uniswap? Who uses Curve? Use aggregators. Use the Llama, the meta aggregator. So there's a lot, 58%, what I was looking at DeFi Prime earlier, 58% of liquidity of volume is on Uniswap. What the fuck? So it's new entrants that literally just go to Uniswap. They don't even use aggregators. They don't use Paraswap. They don't use 1inch, especially not the Llama. So they literally just go there. So my sentiment is that Uniswap's going nowhere. Uniswap's entrenched as like this entry point. So liquidity there is meaningful. And Curve is dominating, and Aura and Balancer are coming in this third position, not with regard to like denseness of liquidity, but with regard to innovation. The biggest innovation of Balancer was their VE BAL, which isn't raw BAL. It's an 80-20 LP position. So it's like Curve F being VECRV. So Balancer has done some very interesting things. And most interestingly, in 2023, VE BAL, people are starting to rent. So there's some nice cash flow, nice bribes. So they have a place, and they are starting to further entrench their lendiness. So I don't see much more room. I don't see liquidity flowing to another AMM necessarily. Now, obviously, Solidly has captured like a fair amount, 150 mil, and it'll be interesting to see what plays out. You only ever know in hindsight where things will land. But I don't see them dominating over a balancer. I don't see them dominating over a curve. And I may be wrong. But point being, that fourth one, the Solidly narrative,
yes,
kind of led me to what Timeless built with Bunny. Bootstrap, the largest volume exchange on mainnet with a currency recycler system. So I'm more interested in that as compared to another exchange trying to take the liquidity from the existing exchanges. And without boring you guys too much, the fourth one or the third one is IPOR, interest rate swaps. That's just probably one of the biggest narratives in a 5-10 year time horizon, being able to hedge rate of change or interest rate changes. I look forward to them getting away from stablecoins and maybe more so like Ethereum and those types of interest rates may be better suited for crypto markets.
IPOR is interesting to me. I think that the concept of an interest rate swap, I think, is intriguing on chain. But like, I guess having watched the actual IPOR move around, it's like those interest rates are wildly volatile, and like I just don't know if that's it. Like, I don't know if this is the implementation of an interest rate swap. Now, that's not necessarily saying that like IPOR couldn't just, become whatever is needed as far as an interest rate swap, because I absolutely believe that interest rate swaps on chain are 100% something that is going to be absolutely necessary in the future. But I think that it's in its current form, this ain't it. Like, as far as like something that's actually going to be usable for an actual financial need. Like, interest rates are huge. Interest rate swaps are hugely important in tradfi. But the other part of interest rate swaps is like everything in crypto, like as far as crypto lending is concerned, almost all of it is perpetual. Like, when you borrow from AAVE, you're not taking out a
Duration.
3-month duration loan. Right, exactly. So like, what are you going to hedge? Like, unless you have like perpetual interest rate swaps to match up against your perpetual loans. But like, I mean, the whole notion is just kind of odd. Just the way finance works on chain is kind of strange. It's like this Seussian financial landscape that like it looks sort of like finance, but like there's just aspects of it that are just not quite there, or just like look very, there are certain parts that are like, so much more prevalent. Like, perpetuals and stuff are huge in crypto, but like outside of crypto, perpetuals kind of a super niche thing. But then like you have other stuff like, duration, which is just absolutely essential to traditional finance, and it's just completely absent from the entire space. And it's like, it's a very, very interesting thing. Like, I honestly think that there should be more, and I've talked to Matt about potentially doing something like that in the future, like doing actual like loans with actual durations on them, because like at the end of the day, like, if you want to do sophisticated risk management, you need to have durations, and you need to be able to understand like, and then the other half of that is knowing interest rates, and then being able to hedge your risks according to certain durations. Like, if you never plan any sort of duration, you can't have a duration mismatch. But like, it's but then perpetual just means like, it's basically like, 100-year treasury or whatever, like it's something that's going to just be very volatile, and it's going to be difficult to hedge. Like, if we want this to actually get to like the next level of finance, we need to have the ability to just say, hey, I need funding for the next month. I want to take it at this interest rate. I'll hedge just in case interest rates get worse as like a lender or whatever. And then, you know, I just think that that's where ultimately this stuff will head. But like retail doesn't think about any of that stuff. Like the whole concept of duration, the closest thing that they think about when it comes to duration is like, you know, am I going to get a 30-year or a 15-year mortgage on my house, or am I going to get the 60-year or 60-month or the 72-month car loan? You know, like that's their entire, you know, or the real crazies that get like the 96-month auto loans, like, but like, it's just,
It's absent. But you know what's interesting? Even though the IPOR rate is wildly volatile, what is it? If you borrow from AAVE or Tapioca, and demand spikes, and your interest rate goes up, doubles, 3%, 30%, because you see some wild transitory volatility-induced interest rates on AAVE historically, and you hedge to the upside. So if that.
Oh, and I was just gonna say, and you have to, like, you have to have those wildly varying interest rates in crypto, because if you look at, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the lender, and this is why we have things set up partly the way we do at Tapioca, like with the variable interest rates, is when you have a perpetual loan, you need to have some methodology by which to call that loan back. Like say you have an asset, right? And you have lent against that asset. Like let's say AVAX, right? You lend against AVAX. And sure, liquidity's fine in AVAX, when you made the loan. But this loan is on chain and it's perpetual and it's sitting out there for maybe years. Like, what if the AVAX guys just give up one day and just are like, you know what, I'm done with this, and liquidity starts to deteriorate on the chain? As a lender who has maybe millions of AVAX loans outstanding, I need a way to get my money back and like actually make sure that by the time the price falls, there's enough liquidity to sell into to actually, make sure we don't incur any bad debt. Like, you cannot have, a fixed interest rate. It's just, otherwise you end up like MIM did, like an abracadabra with all of the UST stuff. Like they were undercharging for leverage. And what happened was that once they really needed people to start paying back their loans, that's a problem with perpetual loans. There's nothing you can even hedge. Like, you can't say, oh, I just need a put option that can cover this asset for the next 3 months, because that's when matching durations and stuff. Like, you have no ability to hedge that because it's perpetual. And so eventually it just becomes a liquidity problem. Like, do you have enough liquidity to sell into when the shit starts to hit the fan? Like, you have to be monitoring that stuff constantly. And so, like, personally, I would like to start seeing duration on crypto loans. Like, you want a fixed rate of interest? Fine. We'll lock in a fixed rate of interest, but we're going to lock in a fixed duration too. And then we can actually hedge that as a protocol. Like, I think that would be cool shit.
It'd be more sustainable, healthier.
It would be far sustainable and far healthier than this just perpetual. Like, I mean, if you asked your average like DeFi user, hey, would you give me a loan? Sure. Can I borrow 700,000 Curve or whatever? Like, you're going to want to know for how long, right? Like, you're not going to go, yeah, sure, here they are. Give them back whenever.
That's what the protocols do.
But that's what protocols do. That doesn't make any sense. Like, but that's how we run these businesses. And it's like, is that actually viable long term?
Yeah, but how does AAVE handle it? If liquidity dries up, the interest rates go through the moon. That's how you claw back the loan.
Right. You have to. What you have to do is you just have to start punish. You have to get your money out front by making sure that you're charging enough of that collateral so that by the time the liquidity does dry up, you've already made enough that if you do incur bad debt, it's covered by what you already charged them off their collateral. And so like, but it's a difficult and tricky problem to solve because like you are 100% dependent upon liquidation. Like if there's no liquidity to sell into when the price reaches a certain threshold, your protocol's at risk. And so, you know, you have to be very, very careful about which assets you pick and what, you know, and you have to monitor that liquidity so that if things start getting dicey, you can start charging more and more and more to incentivize bringing those loans down, you know?
So I just saw a tweet that just came through from our biggest bull in the universe around Bitcoin, and that's Mr. Michael Saylor. And Mr. Michael Saylor is convinced that, and I quote, "the journey is easier if you stay in the Bitcoin lane." Mr. Saylor, I tend to disagree with you. I'm looking at the Bitcoin chart right now, and I completely and utterly disagree with you. But just by the way, I actually had the opportunity.
I hear he's an avid listener, so.
No, he's not. I'm sure he doesn't know we exist, but it doesn't matter. He will at some point. I actually managed to interview one of the founders, Darren from IPOR, last week, and I actually think that they've got a tremendous product. I think it's got complete relevance. I think you guys just, you know, touched on the nuances of it. But the point that I wanted to make is that it's very encouraging to see products that are very relevant in the greater scheme of the real world coming into the crypto space and saying, listen, we need this. We need to actually, you know, we need time limits. We need interest rates. We need to actually quantify this thing better, and more importantly, qualify it even better than that. And I think that's what, you know, IPOR is doing. Sure, I think they're going to learn a whole lot of lessons along the way, like everybody else is. But we've got some serious like OGs involved there. I mean, Darren's been around for 12 years. The guy is, he's properly switched on, you know, like he knows. I'm sure he's been down some dark alleys. I mean, we didn't really chat about it, but I'm sure he has, you know, like if you've been in the crypto space for longer than I think 2 or 3 years, you go down some dark alleys, you know, and I'm not talking about like illegal, dodgy stuff. I'm just what you learn and the lessons you learn and how hard it can be. And I think that needs to be valued even more so because, you know, they've come back and they're saying, let's build this thing to do X, Y, and Z around interest rates. And I think it's going to be a huge success. I think it's going to take time, but I think it's got its place and it's going to really carve a niche in the space. And before we know it, I think it's going to be quite quick, really, that we'll be like, fuck, why didn't we use this thing before?
I think that, like I said earlier, like there's no reason IPOR couldn't be the one to solve that particular, you know, need for that particular essential piece of DeFi tooling that we need. But like, it's just we are going to need that, and like the more time they spend solving that problem before we actually truly need it, the greater head start they're going to have over the protocols that try to come late and do that stuff. But
so I'll publish a thread as well. I'm busy just finishing a thread on it at the moment. It's quite long, but it's definitely worth a read. I mean, not just because I've written it, but it's like, well, it really takes.
That's true
too. Yes, of course it is. Well, I am clarifying that, of course, but it's like what's important about it is that obviously because I wrote it, let's not because I wrote it, but also because it's like it's a fucking complicated protocol in terms of how it works. It really is. Like I interviewed Darren and I was just like, wow, I'm clueless. Like I was really like struggling to come to terms with a lot of the stuff that he was telling me, and it took a while, but it's like I figured it out during the interview. It's like kind of like you research, you think you have an idea, you interview, and you just like.
Your next career move could be the one you never imagined. Web3 nomads, everywhere jobs for anywhere people.
I have no idea. So like in the space of an hour and 15, 20 minutes, I went from like thinking that I knew to being completely clueless to having a clue, and then sitting and writing the thread off the back of an article that one of our writers wrote. And I was just like, okay. So it's not just this. It's quite a complicated, robust, and like really meaningful thing that needs to happen in DeFi. So yeah, it's going to be
You know
cool
why
to
it's early, as everyone here is saying, because borrowing assets using currency units as collateral, that's marginal. That's not the aggregate. The aggregate is using collateral to borrow currency units. That's a Eurodollar system. So right now, IPOR is catering to a bear market structure, or I don't even know, because you're not borrowing dollars using USDC as collateral. So I don't know what the hell kind of structure that would be. So obviously, the future is at minimum Ethereum as collateral, and there's an interest rate. It's not duration, it's perpetual, but it varies with regard to MEV, which is basically volume. And as you get a significant volatility and gas prices spike, there goes your MEV, and then these are the types of values that would be nice to offset with regard to its effect on interest rate payments you need to make on loans.
Very interesting.
I like the duration idea. It's quite needed as well.
So
I think duration would be nice. Like, there's no reason we can't do it. Like, that's the part that strikes me as so odd, is that like there's no reason you can't have duration loans where it's just a collateralized loan that if you haven't paid it back within a month, then
it's sold.
It just gets liquidated and the protocol's whole. Like it's very easy to predict what the liquidity is going to be a month from now. It's much more challenging to predict what the liquidity is going to be 5 years from now. And so like I think that, you know, I just think that it's probably where this is all going to head when all is said and done. However, as a user, why wouldn't I want a loan that I can just take out and just keep forever? Like, that seems sweet.
Well, bear in mind we have Liquidy, which is a perpetual loan that has no interest expense. So it literally just has origination fee, and it's immutable. So we're going to literally see in 5 to 10 years what the hell that kind of system evolves into, because it's not going to change. It's the system that's going to evolve and how it's going to be consumed. No real precedence for that kind of system in traditional finance. Very interesting.
And like, I think it's all about sustainability, trying to build something that's truly going to last, so that when we get to the place where this stuff is actually you know, running the rails of the financial world, that is actually built in a way that, you know, it has all the tooling available and has sustainable protocols that are not going to blow up one day because they gave out a huge loan, you know, denominated in something like, I mean, honestly, I worry about like Bitcoin's liquidity over time, because of just the way the emissions curve works.
Disinflation.
Over time, It just, there's fewer and fewer of them coming out every single for halving, you get fewer and fewer of them. So over time you get, the Bitcoin maxis like to show off the chart of like, look at all these Bitcoins that haven't moved in 10 years.
It's illiquid.
Or like, look at all these. Yeah, that's illiquidity. And like, you want deep liquid. You want to deepen the liquidity as your asset becomes more mature, not make it worse, because like nobody's going to want to hold or huge amounts of what good is holding 1,000 Bitcoin if the liquidity is only 500 deep and you would tank the entire liquidity by just selling half of your position?
Bear in mind, this is where gold isn't what people think it is. The reason gold is so liquid is because of the derivatives and the paper contracts. Otherwise, it has this exactly historically the same directionality in many regards. At least it's disinflationary. It's not disinflation. It's just inflationary.
It's inflationary. And the thing about gold, though, is gold actually there's no halving in gold. It's the same amount roughly coming out every year. So like it's a little more sustainable as far as the liquidity than like a Bitcoin would be, because like there is no halving, like because gold is pretty well spread across the Earth's crust, that like if the price ever gets too high, anybody can just go start digging some up and find it. So I mean, in some ways, gold, yeah, the paper contract thing absolutely is part of it too, because the paper trades liquid, but the physical does not. And
at all. It's illiquid. Actually, it's quite
but isn't Bitcoin's reliability on the price going up in order for that liquidity to be created?
Well, if you mess with the liquidity, you can get the price to do whatever you want. Like if I just said, say I killed every Bitcoin holder in a trial by combat, and
this is what Ben thinks about, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what Ben thinks about in his spare time.
But say let's just pretend that they all forgot their seed phrases, right? And so now there's only like 0.1 Bitcoin left. Like, sure, you could have $1 million sats or something. But say somebody then finds, another 0.1 Bitcoin,
double the liquidity. There goes the price.
There goes the price. Exactly. Like you can make the price do silly things if you rug the liquidity. I mean, that's what, like, and people intrinsically sort of know this stuff, right? Because like that's why they always want to burn tokens. Like everybody's like, let's burn tokens.
Too many.
Like, yeah, but like if you burn too many, you're just, I mean, personally, I would rather have a protocol with twice as many tokens and twice as much liquidity
volume
and by volume, or twice as many tokens and twice as much liquidity by volume. And that would be great, because that means that like if you're a big whale, you don't want to hold the token that has no liquidity. You want to hold the token that the other whales are holding, that people are selling, $50 million at a clip, like every other second.
Scarcity is a problem. Scarcity leads to appreciation, as you've observed. And there's a reason why gold isn't used as money and it didn't work as money in a growing population world. Everything changes as we have the demographics collapse, as Peter Zeihan talks about, but that doesn't mean we have to go back to a monetary system based on a relatively stagnant population. We want our population to increase, which entails you don't want a stagnant liquidity financial market. You don't want the volatility to the upside. That's the biggest observation I have about very vocal Bitcoin persons. They want the halving. decreased supply, disinflation induces price appreciation. No, that's not good. That's not healthy. That's not what you want in a financial market. So that's Austrian economics, arguably. I'm more of a proponent of Keynesian economics, and I would argue that the failure of Keynesian economics is the mutability, is the people, is the humans. If you take the humans out of the equation, you can manage the financials and you get rid of the boogeyman. Smart contracts.
I think you're just going to. I mean, people can ruin anything. I firmly believe that. Like money at the end of the day is a human construct, and it is going to be interacted with by other humans. And like, I think that you're never going to get rid of that human element, because like, I think it's sort of a safety valve, honestly. Like, just think about like what happened with Russia. Russia invades the Ukraine. The majority of the central banks that held their reserves all said, you know, that's kind of fucked up. I'm just going to take your funds and freeze them because I don't think you deserve them anymore. And like that, it right there is like a social, they broke the social contract of those funds and they lost them. And at the end of the day, like I think that some could say like, well, you need more immutable money that nobody can touch. And like, okay, maybe that's true. But if that immutable money eventually becomes such a social problem that the majority of people just don't like what it's causing, they could just as easily just go, you know what, I'm not recognizing that money anymore, and push it off to the, you know,
At least that's the aggregate, though.
to the side.
So at least like, that's the consensus.
Yeah, I mean, well, the consensus is what we care about when it comes to money. I want people to believe that my money is money, you know.
I think that's it's a base case.
Now, if only I could get them to believe that my shit coins are money, then I'd be all set.
That's another.
It's not gonna happen.
They're all currencies.
So I want to just rewind a little bit and ask you both the question. And Ben, you first, because obviously you have intellectual capital in this one. There's been a lot of work that's happened in the background. What is the kind of like the vision for Tapioca DAO? I know it's a big question, but I want to try and dismantle this thing and then revisit this question in many various forms in the months and hopefully the years to come.
I mean, ultimately, the vision is just to create a money market that is like spans across all chains, whatever chains come to be, and does it in a way that's sustainable and in a way that actually like drives returns and drives like actual value add for the users, whoever. Like, I mean, like it's ultimately just wanting to create a protocol that can last, because so many can't. So many can't, like, because of the way that the tokenomics are designed with like a seigniorage, you know, at the forefront of their tokenomics design. And seigniorage is basically the methodology by which most protocols get liquidity so that they can do things with it. But what are they doing with it? The idea is you want to be able to do things with this liquidity that is actually useful and actually provides value. And at the end of the day, that's what the goal is to make useful pieces of financial Legos that actually can stand the test of time.
What is your take on what Tapioca is attempting to do, Noah?
Iterate. I've every time I see a protocol talk about what has been built, why it has been built, and how it has been successful or how it has had failures, that's exactly what I want to see. I want to see protocols that are built based on the history of other protocols, both the successes and the failures. So Tapioca is a seamless cross-chain money market that is AAVE, and AAVE has an overtone of that component, with their V3, but it's not as seamless as it can be. And that's something I've talked about. I think that was at one point a pinned tweet. One of my narratives for 2022 was seamless cross-chain liquidity provisioning. And the AAVE V3, I don't think really hits that. But that is what they wanted to build, and they're trying to do a component of liquidity demand with their stablecoin, and which is just literally just currency, commercial bank currency creation. It's a traditional process of providing collateral and offering having an asset and a liability. And I don't think. I mean, look, I'm talking about AAVE. Why? Because that's the history of what Tapioca is going to be, but just so much more. With the layer 0 component, seamless cross-chain liquidity provisioning, the stablecoin component, that's GHO, but it's just so much more robust in what I've seen. And, just what comes to mind is Liquidy. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So you're just hitting on all cylinders of when I see something historic and like, oh, all right, guys, we're going to make what they made already, but we're going to do it better.
Yeah. I mean, like, I always say that, like, crypto is basically speed running the history of finance. And like,
You love saying that, and it's
I
so
do.
true.
It's but it's true.
It's so
Like,
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're learning lessons that, like, have already been learned in traditional finance and addressed. But we're doing it on chain, and we're doing it in a very organic way. And so, like, it is an iterative process, as he said. Like, it's an iterative process where we have to learn from the things that happened before, because you can't totally just take tradfi and just go, okay, we'll do this, but over here. Like, it doesn't quite perfectly fit, because there are certain technical reasons that things are the way they are on chain that you don't necessarily have in, like, a centralized exchange or something like that. Like, there are aspects of crypto that are sort of unique, and so you can't just do a complete one for one. You've got to kind of build. You can have that sort of in state in mind of, like, in general, we need something kind of like this. But, like, actually having that exact thing may not work on chain due to, like, the whole concept of, like, MEV and gas. Like, the way things work is just, they don't quite work exactly the same way. They work very similar, on chain, but, like, there are some fundamental aspects of transacting on chain that are just a little weird. Like, and like the way LPs worked before, like, where you would provide liquidity across an entire spectrum of prices. Like, the whole concept of, like, Uni V2 is just like, that's not how market making works in the real world. Like, and so, like, it was like a super primitive form of market making, because that's what the technical limitations of what we could do on chain. But as our technical limitations are raised, like as the bar is raised on various technical limitations, it gives you the ability to do things you couldn't do before. So like I think people are just building off of what has been done, solving problems as they come. And so like we're not going to be able to just skip right to the end where you have just this massive pool of liquidity that bounces between various chains, seem like completely seamlessly, and you have just one massive order book kept up between, you know, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the future is going to look like, but I do know that liquidity tends to pool. It tends to end up all in one place. And the, you know, there will still be arbitrage. We're going to probably move more towards high frequency trading when it comes to that arbitrage. And so MEV will look different. Like there's a lot of different things that I sort of feel about what we're going to end up looking like, but I don't know. We're along for the ride.
So next question, just off the back of that. So I totally agree with what you guys are saying, like in the essence of what it is that's going on here. It's kind of like that old saying that, you know, there's always going to be someone who's going to be faster, stronger, and better than you, you know. And I think that's what's happening with AAVE right now. I mean, AAVE will still be relevant, I'm sure, for a long time to come. And I'm sure there'll be various iterations of what it is that they're going to do. And they might even go omni-chain as well. I mean, if those boys or anything to go by from their past, I won't be surprised if they're sitting now and they're thinking of some kind of a layer zero solution and kind of growing this thing and doing. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's just who they are. And it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, an interesting analogy is like layer zero is very, very much like the Swift system. Like there's analogies to like what is done in the traditional financial system there too. And there are alternatives to the Swift system, right? Like it's just a messaging protocol that tells somebody that money over here, yeah, subtract that from there, put it over here. Like, and so as long as that messaging, like you just need a way to transmit messages in a secure way. And so like, yeah, AAVE, others are trying to build, I think wormholes kind of working towards that into like, there are certain parties that are trying to, there's a land grab going on. Everybody wants to control the place with the deepest liquidity. And, you know, we just watching it evolve and, you know, thinking about where things are going.
So for me, like in my mind, the latest or the next form of evolution in the whole space is the fact that we really see the need to have decentralized exchanges that essentially emulate what central exchanges have done, especially from a spot trading scenario. And that, once again, is a trap. It's a net to capture liquidity, you know. And I wanted to ask you guys what your thoughts were around the fact that we do have a potential DEX war kind of like unfolding before us. You know, you've got, you know, your Vertex, which I believe is going to really like change the way that liquidity moves between kind of traditional finance into on-chain versus kind of like your more traditional decentralized exchanges. You know, like Vela, I think it's more kind of like on-chain. You know, DYDX is kind of like, you know, they're way ahead of everybody else in terms of since they've been around. GMX, which I find to be still quite limited, but still the darling of the whole scenario. But there's liquidity trappers, you know, left, right, and center. And I think that whole space is just going to open the whole space even more. And I find that for me is like almost like another chapter in this evolution of DeFi and, you know, attracting liquidity. And I wanted to get your thoughts around that. Noah, what do you think?
$130 billion worth of capital that has stuck to the crypto markets. $80 billion is stuck to Ethereum mainnet. A whole bunch of billions of dollars are stuck in Tron, but that's a whole nother narrative. And the playgrounds are marginal. They are completely marginal, like microscopic relative to Ethereum. Optimism, Ethereum mainnet is 125 times the size of Optimism. It's less than 100 times the size of Arbitrum, but it is multiples, many, many multiples. So, liquidity trap is a great observation. It gives us a sense of why is capital getting stuck, and that historically is something I've defined as a market, and therefore in traditional finance nomenclature, I would define it as an emerging market, just like a country. Capital gets stuck in a country because they're able to provide products and services. There's reason for capital to get stuck in the country. So what's important from the broadest scope is that everything thus far is a proof of concept. There is basically zero money in the crypto space relative to the world. Imagine that. So this is all just an exercise of what the hell works, what is even possible to receive liquidity inflow that could support some sort of scaled enterprise, because these are an enterprise. I define them as enterprises, but this isn't like a real world Lego yet. With regard to traditional productivity, natural resources, and labor. Albeit, as we've talked about, these enterprises do have labor. So it's very gray area trying to digest what the hell actually has been built. It's an emerging market, but it's not. It has productivity, but it's not. So as Ben says, we'll see. It's quite fascinating where the hell it's heading. It's something new.
It
Because
is.
bear in mind, because what do I say? I say we're in peak globalization, as Peter Zion talks about. We have demographics collapse. We have this tight labor market in the United States, which they always talk about. I'm like, no, you have a collapse of employment. You have a demographic collapse. There's not enough people that are working. And look at the psychological stability of everything that's going on. Social civility is questionable, especially throughout Africa. So what the world desperately needs is novel forms of productivity, not just mining and manufacturing and putting stupid shit on shelves in a consumption warehouse, Walmart. It drives people mad. It drives them insane. What is the point of a financial system? The whole point is to organize labor, and the point of labor is social civility. Keep people from chopping off their neighbor's hand because they're hungry. So that's what I see in the crypto space, is the opportunity to create new forms of productivity so my neighbor doesn't try and chop off my hand because they want an egg sandwich.
So I asked you a question around DEXs, and then you just took it to the extreme. I mean, your answer is completely and utterly valid. It's completely rational, but it's like I took a bite, and instead of getting a little piece back, I got the whole fucking dinosaur. That's what happened with that question. Anyways, Ben, would you care to answer the question, please?
I'm actually trying to remember what the question was.
The question was, do you believe like that DEXs are like another iteration of trapping liquidity and just growing the space even further, attracting more?
I think that putting things on the blockchain is very interesting in that, like, it does open up some very, very positive benefits to having this sort of like global network of liquidity. Now, the thing is that at the end of the day, I wonder if there is going to be this trend towards centralization when it comes to the actual price discovery for where the prices of these assets go. Like, you have these assets that can move, on a centralized exchange, these things can move down to the millisecond, right? And so it's and if you have the centralized exchange, like say that I have made Ben Exchange, and it's very different from FTX. It's BTX, and my exchange is now where price discovery is taking place. I can now use that liquidity that exists on chain, and I can do it in a toxic way where I am now arbitraging for profit, because I have the ability to know the prices before anybody else. I can capture that price discovery and the MEV that comes from it faster than anyone else can. And so it just, there's a certain centralizing aspect to that force of time, where time is going to get compressed. We're going to move further and further out to L2s, and then maybe L3s, and then just maybe just it'll take place on centralized exchanges. It's hard to be sure exactly what it's going to look like, but like what I do know in my heart of hearts is that as time goes on, we're going to compress that amount of time between when something happens and the movement of the asset's price. And as you compress that time, it's going to have a centralizing effect on, the liquidity, because the on-chain stuff that's like moving every, few seconds per block is going to get punished relative to the on-chain liquidity, where it can be market made at a milliseconds time. And so I think over time, you're going to see more and more of that liquidity migrate off of the main net and onto the layer 2s, maybe the layer 3s. And then, like, I guess, what does that world look like? I don't know. Like, how do you decentralize a sequencer in a way that like doesn't give any one particular person any advantage there? I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch how you avoid those centralization vectors. I don't have an answer. I haven't figured it all out yet, but these are just some of the things that I'm pondering day by day.
Well said.
It's well said. Yes. I mean, it's completely and utterly like seemingly divorced from the question that I asked. I mean, I didn't expect anything less, but you still answered the question. So.
Completely divorced. So what is, I mean, I guess, let me try to
answer. No. You answered the question. That's fine. You took it a step further, the same way that Noah did. And that's, this whole thing is an experiment, which is, we so set on like coming up with narratives and ideas and drawing lines in the sand. And it's just so like insane, really, but also really important, because that's how we make sense of it. And we kind of like, we have these discussions and we arrive at various conclusions, but we know that tomorrow that those ideas, lines in the sand that we drew could quite easily just blow away, because it's just so ever changing. And I fucking love it about the space.
And the narratives, I mean, sometimes the narratives are sort of, there's always a kernel of truth to the narrative, right?
Absolutely.
There's always like a kernel of truth to it, but sometimes the narratives are decades early. Sometimes they are just wrong. But like, there's always like a certain kernel of like, if it's not truth, it's a desire, like if it's a desire that if it's something everybody wants to believe is true, that
becomes truth.
It can become truth, or it can just take hold as a narrative until it's invalidated.
I'm a big believer of intention. I believe very strongly that intention drives truth eventually. Like whether it's whether it's like seeing the fire in the tree and you're running around as a Neanderthal and you decide like maybe that thing is something and I can do something with it, and then you go and you take it and you cook food with it or whatever the case is. There was an intention there to do that. And it's the same with what we're doing now. The only difference with what's going on now is that it's all accelerated to a degree that we've never experienced in our evolution as a species. That's an absolute fact of the matter. And the fact that we get to see it all unfold the way that we do, and you've said it so many times before, Ben, it's kind of like this is all accelerated traditional finance. It's accelerated. We're effectively fast tracking time. Like what happened in the tradfi world over a 50-year period, we're probably doing in crypto in 3 years, maybe even less. Who knows?
And I
with
think
certain things. I mean,
I think what's important is that we're doing it through the lens of like a modern society, right? Like, I think that there is a broad recognition amongst people that the financial system we have, sophisticated though it may be, is not meeting the needs of most of the users of said financial system. And so that is why the whole crypto narrative in general has taken hold, is because, and why we're all here is because we want to build something that's better and suits the needs of society better than the current one. And so I think it's we're building this stuff, but we're also building it, and we're learning a lot of hard lessons along the way, but we're also building it with a lot of this ethos of like trying to decentralize stuff, trying to keep the power that comes with all this from central, like the centralized system that has been created before. Like there is a so like there's a book that I really, really enjoyed reading. I read this in college, and like I thought it was like sort of game changing mentally, and it is The Social Contract, is what it's called, and it was by a French philosopher. But anyway, like one of the basic premises of the book is that like governments, when they're created, they're at like their most purest form, and then like over time they become corrupted, and then eventually they get overthrown. And I feel like the financial system's going through the same iterations where over time the financial system just got, you know, co-opted by those in power, by those that had the ability to capture the gains. And so you've seen that with the way that, you know, wealth inequality has become incredibly you know, skewed to one direction. And so I think that eventually we're just going to get to the point, and I think that's what crypto is we're just building the new system and the new rails so that we can just flip over to something a little less co-opted, a little more pure, that will eventually then, you know, 50, 70, 80, 90 years from now will have to be destroyed as well. But
that's inevitable.
So The Social Contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. That's, I mean, book written in 1762.
It was actually the book that the writers of the U.S. Constitution, like that was like modern thought at the time, and so like that's the stuff they were reading when they were designing the Constitution. And like there's a lot of really good thoughts in there, just about, you know, just governments in general and society, and it's a good read. I recommend it.
So we're at the top of the hour. I have one more question. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to ask the question and I'm going to get an answer that's vaguely related to it, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because this is the nature of what we do, right? On this fucking banter that we have. It's fucking amazing. It's the favorite thing that I can do in crypto at the moment. So thank you, gentlemen. The question is how, and this is more a question I think for you, no, because it's something that you spend a tremendous amount of time articulating, like with your thoughts throughout the day, which I fucking love reading, and I always smile. Like I always smile. It's like Noah is fucking having a great rant, and it's like,
how do
the rants, the Noah rants are just a thing of beauty, and they are ever present in this wonderful journey that I'm currently traveling. And just know that it's kind of like a light that's here for me, you know. And it's like,
I like
sometimes
them.
it burns really bright, and sometimes it's like really light, like really dim, but it's always fucking there. And it's the question is, how do we take the complexity of the traditional finance world in its current state, with all its unravelings, all its perfections, mostly imperfections, and how do we bring those into this reality that Ben so eloquently described in this process? How do we go about bringing that very essence of what is out there in here? And do you think it's possible?
You know, endgame thought is something that permeates the space. Like, what happens when Bitcoin supply runs out? Or just regulation endgame. It'll drive you nuts. You'll only ever know in hindsight the way the system works. So all you could ever do is understand it iteratively, one piece at a time. What's pertinent is to peer through the narrative insanity. What's meaningful. So what is?
I told you I wasn't going to get the answer I asked for. But anyway,
you can't.
Carry on, please. Carry on.
He's telling you why that answer.
You can't. There's no reason to replace it. What's pertinent is pieces are here. Liquidity is sticky. People want to use it. Why? Because my fucking bank closes at 3:00 in the afternoon. What kind of stupid shit is that? Then Fed now is going to fix it. All right. You know, it's going to go back and forth. But look, social contract's broken. Fed now, they're a bunch of dicks. My bank's a dick. Nobody, you don't want to use it. You have to use it. So what if there's something else that's interesting, something that's made by someone that had good intentions, and that has a more favorable overtone of opportunity or fairness and options and choices. And when it's like, when the only cable internet I can have is Comcast. I hate that shit. I want another cable internet provider. I want another wire transfer provider. I want another check provider. What the hell's a check? Yeah. Point is, I want options and alternatives. I want things that offer to me that I can do that I typically couldn't do. I can't. If I go to HSBC, they're not going to take my money and make a market, a forex market. So when I saw that in like 2019, I was like, whoa, a forex market, and I can make the market. That's so cool. So yeah. Isn't that incredible? That's DeFi. That's me being able to do something that traditional finance said, fuck no, you can't do that shit.
Yeah.
What a beautiful answer. I love that. Fuck yeah. Ben,
just a quick
just
thought
to finish it off. Yeah.
A quick thought there. The reason I love Captain Rational's tweets is because they remind me that I'm not the only one who's just constantly thinking about this shit.
But you know what? I love Captain Rational's thoughts. You know what? I love his tweets. It's just purely because I get to be reminded that this is important stuff. You know, like, this is actually really important. And this is the kind of stuff that, Ben, you think about all the time. You know, Noah's the one who's ranting about all the time. And I get to be reminded that I need to be thinking about this stuff all the time because it's fucking important. And you hit the nail on the head. No, it's kind of like, I want to do stuff, and I want the option to be able to fucking do the stuff that I want to do. And I don't want to listen to some boomer fossil tell me that I can't do it because it's going to threaten his very business, you know. And it's, you know, so for the next time we get on, like, I mean, there's a whole lot more that I want to chat about. I don't want to cover it in today's, because I think this is a good amount of time. It's like, I really want to explore, you know, how the incumbents are threatened by what's going on now and how this whole thing's going to play out. And I know that you both have some really good thoughts around that, but we'll save it for next time.
I think that would be a good. We could have an entire discussion about that for sure. Absolutely,
because it's so pertinent to what is going to determine the future of what it is that we're doing right now. At the end of the day, they hold the keys right now, and we need to now almost snatch those keys out of their hands. I think we will, but it's not going to be easy. And that's where the interesting dynamic is going to come in. And we get to talk about it next time. But we'll save it for next time, gentlemen.
Let's start that next one with how insanely significant is Tether. So we'll start it off controversially.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you get to hear about our next show before we've even planned it, but we have already, if you get my drift. So
it's $71.5 billion significant.
Which is big, but zero also simultaneously. Quantum significance.
For the next show, we have something lined up, and we might land up doing it sooner than you think, because clearly we've all had a bloody good time today, and who knows, we might do it again next Monday. So take it easy, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.